The Foundation. Part 1. The Lawn. The taxi pulled up to what used to feel like home, and I saw my life scattered across the lawn like garbage on collection day. I didn't move at first. Couldn't. My hand was still on the door handle, fingers numb from gripping it during the 3-hour drive from my sister Margaret's funeral. The driver cleared his throat. Once, twice, waiting for me to pay, to leave, to do something other than stare. Ma'am, we're here. Here. The word felt wrong. Here was supposed to be the house Thomas and I bought 42 years ago with our wedding money and a loan from his father. Here was where I'd raised David, where I'd kissed my husband goodbye on a Tuesday morning and never saw him alive again. Here was the only place that still held pieces of him: his reading chair, his tools in the garage, the doorframe in the kitchen where we'd marked David's height every birthday. And now, here was a yard sale I'd never authorized. I paid the driver with shaking hands. He looked at the mess, then at me, then had the decency to wait until I was out before pulling away quickly, as if my misfortune might be contagious. The November wind cut through my funeral dress. Black, simple, the same one I'd worn to Thomas's service 8 months ago. Margaret would have hated that I'd worn it to hers too. "Linda," she would have said, "buy yourself something new, something with color. You're 63, not dead." But she was dead now, and I was standing in front of my house, looking at my wedding albums splayed open in the grass, pages soaking up mud. That's when Daniela appeared on the porch. My daughter-in-law wore yoga pants and one of David's old college sweatshirts, her blonde hair in a careless bun that somehow looked intentional. She'd been living here for 3 years, since David convinced me I was too lonely in this big house, that I needed family around. At first, I'd been grateful. The silence after Thomas died had been suffocating. Now, she looked at me like I was the intruder. "Linda." Not mom, never mom, just my name, flat and dismissive. "You're back early." I stepped over a box of Christmas ornaments, Thomas's mother's delicate glass angels now mixed with broken picture frames. "What is this?" "Spring cleaning." She smiled, bright and empty. "Well, fall cleaning, I guess." "You threw out my things? This is rubbish, Linda. You've been hoarding." "Hoarding?" The word hit me like a slap. I watched her mouth move, explaining something about making room and fresh starts and unhealthy attachment to the past. But I'd stopped hearing words. I was seeing. My mother's china, the set she'd carried from Poland in 1952, sitting in a wet cardboard box. Thomas's navy uniform, the one he'd worn in the photo on our mantle, crumpled next to the recycling bin. The baby blanket I'd knitted for David, cream-colored with blue elephants, now dirt-stained and stepped on. "Where's David?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "Showing a house. Big commission, probably." Daniela examined her nails, French manicured and perfect. "Look, I know this seems harsh, but you've been gone 2 days. I figured it was the perfect time to finally deal with all this stuff. You hold on to everything. It's not healthy. My sister just died." "I know, and I'm sorry, but life goes on, Linda. You said so yourself after Thomas passed. We have to keep moving forward." I had said that. I'd said it at the funeral, to well-meaning neighbors, to David when he'd found me crying in the garage at 3 a.m. I'd said it because that's what you say, what you're supposed to say, what keeps people from worrying too much. I never meant she should use my grief as a weapon. "I want my things back inside." "There's no room." "Then make room." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, that I'd raised my voice. In 3 years, I'd been the grateful mother-in-law. I'd babysat their twin girls without complaint. I'd cooked dinners, done laundry, made myself small and useful and quiet in the house I'd owned for 40 years. "Linda, be reasonable. We're trying to build a life here. Modern, clean, organized. We can't do that surrounded by dusty boxes and old, get my things inside." She actually laughed. Or what? The question hung between us. Or what? What could I do? This was my son's wife, the mother of my granddaughters. We were family. You don't fight with family, not really. You accommodate, you compromise. You swallow your words and your pride, and you keep the peace because what's the alternative? What's one wedding album compared to watching your grandchildren grow up? What's a dead husband's uniform compared to Sunday dinners and birthday parties and belonging somewhere? I looked at Daniela's perfect smile, at her casual stance on my porch, wearing my son's shirt, standing in the doorway of my house, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 months. Not grief, not sadness, rage. Pure, clarifying, bone-deep rage. I'm calling my lawyer, I said quietly. Your lawyer? She actually laughed again, louder this time. What's he going to do? Sue me for cleaning? I didn't answer. I pulled out my phone, the new one David had insisted I get so we can FaceTime with the girls, and scrolled through my contacts. I hadn't called Mr. Mendez since Thomas's estate was settled, but his number was still there. The phone rang once, twice. Don't be dramatic, Linda. Just take what you really want, okay? We can compromise. Mr. Mendez's office? This is Linda Hartwell. I need to speak with Mr. Mendez immediately. Daniela was still talking, her voice rising now, but I was walking away, stepping carefully over my scattered life. I picked up the photo album as I went, cradling it against my chest. The pages were ruined, but the pictures might still be salvageable. Behind me, I heard Daniela say something sharp, something about ungrateful, and after everything we've done for you. I kept walking. Down the driveway, past the mailbox that still said the Hartwells in Thomas's careful printing, toward the sidewalk where I could speak without shaking. Mrs. Hartwell? Mr. Mendez's voice was warm, concerned. Is everything all right? I looked back at the house. My house. The one Thomas and I had painted blue because I loved the color of morning glories. The one where we'd added a nursery, then converted it to David's teenage bedroom, then converted it again when the twins were born. The one I'd signed over to David last year when he'd said he wanted to build equity and plan for the future. Not signed over, transferred ownership of. No, wait. I stopped breathing for a moment, remembering. The paperwork that David had brought me, excited and hopeful, explaining about estate planning and tax benefits. I'd been so deep in grief, so lost without Thomas, that I'd barely read it. I remembered signing things, lots of things, while David talked and Daniela smiled encouragingly. But had I signed over the deed, or had I just added David's name? Mrs. Hartwell? Mr. Mendez? I need you to pull the property records for 4782 Maple Drive. I need to know exactly whose name is on that house. There was a pause. I can do that. May I ask why? I looked at the lawn, at my life on display for the neighbors to see, at Daniela standing on the porch with her arms crossed, waiting for me to back down, to apologize, to remember my place. Because I need to know what I'm working with. Part 2. The records. Mr. Mendez's office smelled like leather and old paper. Expensive and serious. I'd been here twice before. Once for our will, once after Thomas died. Both times, I'd felt small in the big chair across from his mahogany desk, overwhelmed by legal terms and decisions I didn't fully understand. This time was different. The house is yours, Mrs. Hartwell. Mr. Mendez pushed the documents across his desk. He was in his late 50s, with kind eyes and a patient manner that had helped me through the worst of my grief. Now those eyes were sharp, focused. Solely yours. David's name was never added to the deed. I stared at the papers. My name. Linda Marie Hartwell. No David. No Daniela. But we signed. I remember signing. You signed a financial power of attorney in case of medical incapacity. Sensible, especially after your husband's sudden passing. But the house remained in your name. He leaned forward. David never followed through with the property transfer. Do you know why? I didn't. I'd asked David about it once, maybe 2 months after Thomas died, when I was starting to emerge from the fog. He'd said something vague about waiting for the right time and tax considerations. I'd been so relieved not to deal with more paperwork that I let it go. Now I understood. David hadn't wanted the responsibility. He'd wanted me to believe I'd signed it over, wanted me grateful, beholden, while keeping his options open. If things went south, if they decided I was too much trouble, they could move out any time. But as long as I believed the house was theirs, I'd stay quiet, accommodating, small. What are my options? I asked. Mr. Mendez studied me for a long moment. That depends on what you want to accomplish. What did I want? 24 hours ago, I would have said peace. Family. A quiet place to grow old surrounded by people I loved. Now I wanted my wedding album to dry properly. I wanted Thomas's uniform cleaned and hung with respect. I wanted my mother's china put away safely, each piece wrapped in tissue paper, the way she'd taught me. I wanted my granddaughters to grow up knowing that women don't have to be small. I want them out, I said. The words shocked me, not because they weren't true. I felt their truth in my bones, but because I'd said them out loud, to a lawyer, making them real. Your son and his family? My daughter-in-law threw my belongings on the lawn like trash. My son allowed it, or didn't stop it, which amounts to the same thing. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs. I spent 8 months trying to disappear in my own home, being grateful they stayed, being useful, being quiet. And now? Now I'm tired of being quiet. Mr. Mendez picked up a pen, clicked it twice. A thinking habit I remembered from before. As the sole owner, you have several options. The most straightforward would be to serve them with a notice to vacate. In this state, you'd need to give them 30 days. 30 days of Daniela's tight smiles, 30 days of David caught in the middle, 30 days of the twins asking why Grandma was being mean. What else? You could sell the property, force the issue. No. That came out faster than I expected. This is my home. Thomas and I built our life here. Then we need to establish boundaries. He pulled out a fresh legal pad. You're the owner, they're your tenants, but there's no lease, no formal agreement. That's problematic. Make one. He looked up, surprised. You want to formalize a rental agreement with your son? Did I? The idea felt cold, transactional. But watching my wedding album rot in the grass had been cold too. Being called a hoarder in my own home had been cold. Sometimes you fight cold with cold. Yes, I said. A proper lease, market rate rent, all utilities included, but they pay for anything extra, cable, internet, whatever. And I want it clear that I have access to all areas of the house. My things go where I say they go. Mr. Mendez wrote quickly, his pen scratching across the page. Security deposit. I hadn't thought about that. A security deposit from my son felt harsh, punitive. But I remembered the china, the broken frames, the careless way Daniela had treated 40 decades of my life. Yes, standard amount. First and last month rent? Yes. And if they refuse? Then they could leave. The thought should have hurt more than it did. I loved my son, I did. But love shouldn't require you to disappear. Love shouldn't ask you to watch your memories thrown away and call it cleaning. If they refuse, they have 30 days to find somewhere else. Mr. Mendez stopped writing. Mrs. Hartwell, I have to ask, have you spoken to David about any of this? He wasn't there when I got home. He's still not answering his phone. I'd tried calling 4 times since leaving the house. 3 times it went to voicemail. The 4th time, Daniela answered his phone and said he was busy with clients and would call me back later. He hadn't. This will damage your relationship. My relationship is already damaged. I'm just making it official. It came out harder than I meant it to. but I didn't take it back. Because it was true. Somewhere between Thomas dying and Margaret's funeral, my relationship with David had shifted. Or maybe I just finally noticed what it had become. When had he last asked me how I was feeling? Not, "Are you okay?" The reflexive question that expects a yes, but really asked, really listened. When had he last protected me instead of managing me? When had I become a problem to solve instead of a person to love?
"I'll draft the documents," Mr. Mendez said quietly. "Have them ready by tomorrow afternoon. But Linda," he used my first name, which he'd never done before, "once you serve these papers, there's no going back. Your son will see this as a betrayal." And what was throwing my things on the lawn? He didn't have an answer for that. Part 3. The Reckoning. I stayed at a hotel that night. A Hampton Inn off the highway. Generic and clean and blessedly silent. I spread the wedding album across the bed, carefully separating the pages, trying to save what I could. Some photos were ruined, the faces blurred into ghosts, but others survived. Thomas in his Navy uniform, impossibly young, grinning at the camera. Me in my mother's wedding dress, which I'd altered to fit, holding a bouquet of grocery store roses because that's all we could afford. The two of us cutting a cake in his parents' backyard, laughing at something his brother said. David as a baby. David's first day of school. David graduating. Thomas's hand on his shoulder, both of them proud. Where had that boy gone? The one who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd insisted on saying grace at dinner even though we weren't religious, who'd held my hand at his father's funeral and whispered, "We'll get through this, Mom, together." My phone buzzed. Finally, David. "Mom, what the hell? Daniela said you threatened to call the cops." I hadn't mentioned police. Interesting how the story had transformed. I called my lawyer. Silence. Then, "Your lawyer? About what?" "About my things on the lawn. About Daniela calling my life rubbish. She was just cleaning, Mom. You're being dramatic." "Don't." The word cut through his excuse. "Don't minimize this, David. Don't make me the problem." "I'm not. Look, can we talk about this in person? Come home. We'll figure it out." That's not my home anymore. Daniela made that clear. She didn't mean, yes, she did. And you know what? She was right. It's not my home. It's my house, but not my home. Another silence, longer this time. What does that mean? It means Mr. Mendez is drafting a lease agreement. Market rate. If you want to continue living there, you'll sign it. If not, you have 30 days to leave. Wait, you're serious? You're going to charge us rent? We can't afford. Real estate has been slow, and with the twins in private school, then pull them out or move somewhere cheaper. Those are your choices, not my problems. Jesus, Mom, what happened to you? Aunt Margaret dies and suddenly you're, what, evicting your own family? That's what he thought this was about? Margaret's death had nothing to do with this. Or everything to do with it. Not because losing her had changed me, but because it had clarified what I already knew. Life is short. People die suddenly, unexpectedly, leaving you with words unsaid and regrets that weigh more than grief. Margaret had spent her last 10 years doing exactly what she wanted. Traveling, painting, dating a man 20 years younger who made her laugh. Our mother had hated it, called it undignified. Margaret hadn't cared. "You've got one life, Linda," she told me at Thomas's funeral. "Don't waste it being grateful for scraps." I'd thought she was being harsh, bitter. Maybe a little cruel to say it while I was drowning in loss. Now I understood she was trying to save me. "David," I said, my voice steady, "I am not evicting you. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference." "Boundaries? You want boundaries? Put a lock on your bedroom door." This is cruel, Mom. Daniela's in tears. Daniela threw my wedding album in the mud. She was cleaning. She had no right. My voice cracked on the last word. I was standing now, breathing hard, the phone shaking in my hand. Across the room, my reflection in the mirror looked wild, unfamiliar.
When had I gotten so small? When had my shoulders curved inward like that? Those were my things, my memories, my life. And she threw them away like garbage because they weren't convenient for her. Because I'm not convenient for her. That's not fair. Do you know what she said to me yesterday? When I asked why my mother's china was in a wet box, he didn't answer. She said, maybe this is a sign you need to let go. Let go. As if 40 years of marriage, of building a life, of loving your father, as if all of that is just clutter to be cleared out? She didn't mean it like that. How did she mean it, David? Explain to me how throwing away your father's uniform is anything other than cruel. He stopped, started again. She's trying to help. You've been depressed. I've been grieving. There's a difference. Mom, please, just come home. We'll talk. We'll figure something out. I'll be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. with Mr. Mendez. You can sign the lease or you can start packing. Your choice. I hung up before he could respond, before I could weaken, before the mother and me, the one who'd kissed his scraped knees and packed his lunches and taught him to tie his shoes, could override the woman who just watched her life thrown away. The hotel room was very quiet. I sat down on the bed, carefully, as if moving too fast might shatter something. My hands were still shaking, my chest felt tight, but underneath the fear and the anger and the grief, I felt something else, something light, something like relief. Part 4. The papers. Mr. Mendez arrived at my house at 1:55 p.m. carrying a leather briefcase and an expression that suggested he'd done this kind of thing before. Walked into family wars armed with legal documents and careful neutrality. I'd arrived 15 minutes earlier, parking across the street like a visitor. My things were no longer on the lawn. Someone, probably David, had brought everything inside, though I had no idea where. The grass was still littered with debris, a few scattered photographs, a broken picture frame. Evidence. I took photos with my phone. Mr. Mendez had suggested it. Document everything, he said. Just in case. Just in case what he hadn't specified. But I understood. Just in case this went bad. Just in case David fought back. Just in case I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't cruel, wasn't the villain in this story. The front door opened before we reached it. David stood there in khakis and a button-down, his work clothes. He'd always been handsome. He had Thomas's strong jaw, my father's height. But today he looked tired, older than his 38 years. Mom? His voice was careful, controlled. Mr. Mendez. David? I didn't move to hug him. Neither did he. We stood there in an awkward tableau, mother and son, separated by 3 feet and a chasm of hurt. Can we come in? Mr. Mendez asked, professional and polite. David stepped aside. The house looked different. Cleaner, yes, but also emptier. The photos that had lined the hallway were gone. Thomas's reading chair was missing from the living room. The bookshelf where I'd kept my mother's collection of Polish poetry, empty. Where are my things? They're in the basement. Safe. David rubbed his face. I'm sorry about yesterday. Daniela, she got carried away. She's been stressed. Where is she? Upstairs with the girls. She thought it would be better if we talked alone. Convenient. Or cowardly. Probably both. We sat at the dining room table, the one Thomas built from reclaimed barnwood, solid and scarred and beautiful. I'd had dinner at this table every night for 42 years. Family dinners, birthday celebrations, quiet meals with Thomas where we'd read the paper and shared our days. Now, it felt like sitting in a stranger's house. Mr. Mendez opened his briefcase. Shall we begin? The lease was straightforward. 12-month term, renewable. $2,000 per month, which was actually below market rate. Mr. Mendez had suggested $3,500, but I'd refused. I wasn't trying to punish David. I was trying to establish reality. Security deposit equal to 1 month's rent, first and last month due at signing. Detailed inventory of my personal belongings, stored in designated areas off limits to the tenants. Right to access all areas of the property with 24 hours notice. Standard wear and tear provisions, groundskeeping, everything a landlord would require of a tenant. Everything a mother should never need from her son. David read through it slowly, his expression shifting from resigned to surprised to angry. $2,000 a month? Mom, we can't afford that. Then find somewhere cheaper. And this clause about access, you want to inspect the house? Like we're strangers? You treated me like a stranger. I'm just making it official. That's not fair. None of this is fair, David. Fair would have been asking me before throwing my things away. Fair would have been protecting my belongings instead of defending your wife. Fair would have been calling me back yesterday instead of avoiding me like a problem you hoped would solve itself. He flinched. Good. Maybe he should feel uncomfortable. Maybe that was the point. Mr. Mendez, can you give us a minute, please? David turned to the lawyer. Mr. Mendez looked at me. I nodded. When the lawyer stepped outside, David leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Mom, I know you're hurt. I get it. But this, he gestured at the papers. This isn't you. You don't do things like this. You're kind. You're patient. I'm tired. What? I'm tired, David. Tired of being kind to people who treat me like I'm in the way. Tired of being patient with disrespect. Tired of making myself small so everyone else can be comfortable. We never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. I did it automatically because that's what I've always done, what I was taught to do. Make peace. Keep quiet. Don't make waves. I pressed my palms flat against the table, feeling the grain of the wood Thomas had sanded smooth. Your father never made me feel that way. 42 years, and he never once made me feel like I was too much, or not enough, or in the way. Dad's gone, Mom. I know. Believe me, I know. My voice cracked. But that doesn't mean I have to disappear too. David looked down at the lease. His jaw worked like he was chewing words, trying to find the right ones. Daniela says you're punishing her. Daniela threw my wedding album in the mud. She didn't know? Yes, she did. She knew exactly what she was doing. Just like she knows exactly what she's doing now, sending you down here alone, making you the bad guy while she plays the victim upstairs. His head snapped up. That's not, isn't it? Where is she? Why isn't she down here apologizing? Why isn't she explaining why my things were on the lawn of my house? Because she scares her. The words hit me like a slap. She scares her? You called your lawyer. You're threatening eviction. What was she supposed to think? She was supposed to think, maybe I shouldn't have thrown my mother-in-law's belongings away like trash. I stood up, needing to move, needing space. I don't scare her. I challenged her. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't back down, didn't apologize, didn't make it easier for her. And she can't handle it. That's not fair. You don't know what she's dealing with. The pressure, the stress of managing this house. I managed this house for 42 years. I raised you in this house. I buried your father and came back to this house and learned how to exist in these rooms without him. Don't talk to me about managing. We stared at each other. I could see Thomas in his face, the set of his jaw, the way his eyes darkened when he was upset. But I could see myself too, in the stubborn line of his mouth, the way he stood his ground, even when he was wrong. God, when had my son learned to be wrong with such confidence? I'll sign it. The lease. I'll sign it. Relief and disappointment washed over me in equal measure. Relief because this was what I wanted, wasn't it? Boundaries, respect, control of my own home. Disappointment because some part of me, the mother part, the weak part, had hoped he'd fight for a different solution, hoped he'd say, let's fix this, let's find a way to actually be a family. But he didn't. He just reached for a pen. Wait, I said, what about Daniela? She needs to sign too. David's hand froze. She's upset. Maybe tomorrow. No, today. Both of you. Or the deal's off. For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd stand up, walk out, choose his wife over his mother. And maybe that would have been the right choice. The healthy choice. The choice a good husband makes. But he didn't. He stood up, jaw tight, and went upstairs. I listened to the murmur of voices above me. Daniela's rose, sharp and angry. David's stayed low, steady. The twins were saying something, their voices bright and confused. Then footsteps on the stairs. Daniela descended like she was walking to her own execution. She'd changed into nicer clothes, a black dress that probably cost more than my hotel room. Her makeup was perfect, her eyes were red. She'd been crying, or wanted me to think she had been. Linda. She stood across the table from me, David hovering behind her like a nervous shadow. I think we got off on the wrong foot. You threw my belongings on the lawn. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. The apology was perfect. Right words, right tone, completely empty. Are you? I asked. Or are you sorry you got caught? Her face hardened. Just for a second, but I saw it, the mask slipping. I was trying to help. You've been depressed since Thomas died, holding on to things that only make you sad. Don't say his name. What? Don't say my husband's name. You didn't know him. You didn't love him. You don't get to pretend you were doing this for his memory or my mental health or any other excuse you've invented. Mom, David started. No. I didn't look away from Daniela. You were making room. Room for your things, your style, your life. And I was in the way. My grief was in the way. My memories were in the way. So you cleaned it up. Got rid of the clutter. That's not... Sign the lease or leave. Those are your options. Daniela looked at David. He looked at the floor. This is insane, she said. You're asking us to pay rent in a house we've been living in for free? For 3 years. Rent-free for 3 years. $48,000 I could have charged. Call it a gift. I slid the lease across the table. Now I'm asking for what's fair. Fair would be recognizing that we've been taking care of you. By throwing my things away? By making me feel like a guest in my own home? That's not care, Daniela. That's erasure. She grabbed the pen, signed her name with hard, angry strokes. There. Happy? I wasn't. I didn't think I'd be happy for a long time. But I was something else. Something harder and more permanent. I was done. Part 5. The New Order. The first month was warfare disguised as coexistence. Daniela paid the rent, exactly $2,000, delivered by check, no note. The security deposit came in installments, $100 at a time, each payment a small act of defiance. David started working longer hours, or pretending to. Either way, I barely saw him. The twins, Emma and Sophie, 8 years old and confused, kept asking why Grandma didn't live with them anymore. I'd moved into a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom, clean, mine. Every surface, mine. Every decision, mine. It felt bigger than the house ever had. But I missed my granddaughters. Missed them so much it physically hurt. So I instituted Sunday dinners, my right as landlord to access the property with 24 hours notice. The first dinner was uncomfortable. Daniela set the table with paper plates, a petty insult to my mother's china safely locked in storage. David carved the roast I'd brought with mechanical precision. The twins chattered, blessedly unaware of the tension humming through the room like a live wire. Grandma, why don't you live here anymore? Emma asked, direct as children are. Because Grandma has her own place now, Daniela answered before I could speak. Isn't that nice? She has her own space. But I miss her. Well, she's here now. Eat your vegetables. I watched Daniela cut Sophie's meat, tuck Emma's napkin, play perfect mother while treating me like an unwanted guest. And something in me shifted. This wasn't about the house anymore. Maybe it never had been. This was about Emma and Sophie growing up watching their mother treat their grandmother like a problem. learning that elders are disposable, that respect is conditional. The power is something you take, not earn. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, I have an announcement. Everyone looked at me. I'm converting this house into a rental property, official rental property, not just family arrangement, which means some changes. What kind of changes? David's voice was carefully neutral. I'm hiring a property management company. They'll handle repairs, collect rent, conduct inspections. Everything will be professional, official. You're bringing strangers into our house? Daniela's voice rose. My house. And yes, property managers. It's standard for rental properties. This is because I won't use your china, isn't it? Daniela's laugh was sharp, ugly. You're punishing me. I'm protecting my investment. This house is worth $500,000. I have a right to make sure it's properly maintained. David pushed back from the table. Can we talk about this privately? No need. It's already done. The management company starts next week. That was a lie. I hadn't hired anyone yet, but watching Daniela's face go pale, watching David struggle between defending his wife and maintaining peace, it felt good. Wrong, maybe, but good. I'd spent 8 months being the good widow, the good mother, the good grandmother, always accommodating, always understanding. I was done being good. Part 6, the breaking point. The property management company sent an inspector in week 3, a thorough woman named Patricia, who documented everything. Scratched floors, stained carpets, a crack in the foundation I hadn't known about. The basement has water damage, she told me, showing photos. See here? Mold growth. This is recent. How recent? Month, maybe 2, around the time Daniela had moved my things down there. I stared at the photos. My mother's china, stored in boxes in a damp basement. Thomas's Navy uniform hanging in air, thick with mold spores. 40 years of photographs deteriorating in the wet. Can it be fixed? Patricia nodded. Waterproofing, dehumidifiers, mold remediation. But it's expensive, $8,000 to $10,000. Who pays? Depends on the lease terms. If it's tenant negligence, they stored items in a basement they knew was damp. Patricia made a note. Then it's their responsibility. I'll include it in my report. David called that evening, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. $10,000? Mom, we don't have $10,000. Then you shouldn't have stored my belongings in a wet basement. We didn't know it was wet. The boxes were damp when I moved them, Daniela's voice in the background, feeding him lines. The crack in the foundation, that could have happened anytime. This is your house, your maintenance issue. The lease specifies tenant responsibility for damage caused by negligence or improper use. You stored items in an unsuitable location. That's negligence. This is bullshit. David's professionalism cracked. You're nickel and diming us, finding excuses to, I'm enforcing the lease you signed. If you'd like to break it, you're welcome to. 30 days notice. Silence. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then, is this really what you want? To destroy our family over money? The question landed like he'd intended it to. A guilt bomb, designed to detonate my resolve. It didn't work. I didn't destroy anything, David. I'm just refusing to pay for the damage anymore. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been paying. For 3 years, I've been paying. In space, in dignity, in pieces of myself I shaved off to fit into the corners of my own home. I'm done. You're not the only one who lost him. David's voice broke. Dad died and I lost him too, but I couldn't fall apart because I had a family to take care of. A wife, kids, and a mother you forgot about. That's not fair. You're right. Fair would have been you asking how I was doing, actually asking, not just going through the motions. Fair would have been protecting my things when your wife decided they were garbage. Fair would have been, she's my wife, Mom, what was I supposed to do? And there it was. The truth we'd been dancing around for months. When forced to choose, David had chosen Daniela. Of course he had. That's what marriage is, choosing your partner, building a new family, leaving childhood behind.
But it shouldn't mean forgetting who raised you. It shouldn't mean allowing cruelty disguised as cleaning. You were supposed to remember who I was before I was the grieving widow in your way, I said quietly. You were supposed to remember that I'm your mother, that I loved your father, that those things Daniela threw away were our history, our life, the foundation you were built on. I know that. No, you don't. Because if you did, you never would have let it happen. I hung up before he could respond, before the tears came, before I could take it back. Part 7. The consequences. The property management company sent a formal notice: repair the water damage or face lease violation. David had 30 days. He didn't respond. Daniela did. She showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday morning, dressed for war in heels and attitude. We need to talk. I almost didn't let her in, but curiosity won. I wanted to see what card she'd play: victim, villain, or something in between. She chose unexpected honesty. She said, I threw your things away because I was jealous. There. Happy? I was jealous of a dead man. I waited. You loved him so completely, 42 years, and you still lit up when you talked about him. Do you know how that feels? Watching my husband's mother love his father more than my husband loves me? That's not— Yes, it is. David's a good man, a good father, but he's not passionate. He's not romantic. He comes home, he's tired, we eat dinner, we watch TV, we go to bed. And I'm grateful, I am. But then I'd see you, still mourning, still in love after all those years, and I'd think, will anyone ever love me like that? I sat down slowly. This wasn't what I'd expected. So you threw away my memories? I threw away the evidence of what I don't have. Daniela's perfect composure cracked. Every photo, every keepsake, every reminder that true love exists, and I settled for comfortable. It hurt to look at. And you were so sad all the time, and I thought, maybe if she let go, she'd be happier. Maybe we'd all be happier. That wasn't your decision to make. I know. I know that now. But in the moment, I convinced myself I was helping, that you were stuck in the past and I was freeing you. By destroying my past? By giving you a reason to move forward. Daniela met my eyes. I thought you'd be angry for a week, then get over it. I didn't realize that it would shatter what was left of our relationship, that you'd burn it all down rather than forgive me. There it was, the expectation that I'd be the bigger person, that I'd understand, accommodate, forgive, that I'd shrink myself again to preserve the peace. I'm not burning anything down. I'm building something new. For the first time in my life, I'm building something that's entirely mine, on my terms, without asking permission or making myself smaller. By evicting your son? By charging fair rent for a property I own? By expecting respect in my own home? By refusing to disappear? Daniela looked around my apartment, at the photos I'd salvaged and reframed, at Thomas's navy uniform hanging carefully on the wall, at the bookshelf where my mother's poetry sat beside novels I'd been meaning to read for years. You've made a life here, she said, something like surprise in her voice. I have. Without us. Yes. She stood up, smoothed her dress. David won't pay for the repairs. He can't. We're barely making the rent as it is. Then move out. And go where? Do you know what rentals cost in this city? We'd have to pull the twins from their school, leave their friends. Those are problems you should have considered before storing my belongings in a wet basement. They're your grandchildren. Exactly, my grandchildren, who I love, who I want to see grow up understanding that respect isn't optional, that elders deserve dignity, that family means more than just using each other until it's inconvenient. Daniela's jaw tightened. You're willing to sacrifice your relationship with them to prove a point? I'm not sacrificing anything. I see them every Sunday. I call them every Wednesday. I'm at their school plays and soccer games. I'm their grandmother, not their landlord. I stood up, met her eyes. But you and David, you're my tenants, and tenants pay for damages they cause. This will destroy us. Then you'll build something new, like I did. She left without another word. Part 8. The Surrender. David called a week before the repair deadline. We're moving out. I'd been expecting it, preparing for it, but hearing the words still felt like a punch. When? End of the month. Daniela's sister has a place in Phoenix. Bigger market for real estate, lower cost of living, fresh start. Phoenix. 1,500 miles away. The twins would be gone. Sunday dinners, Wednesday phone calls, soccer games, all of it. Gone. David, this is what you wanted, right? Us out, you win. This isn't about winning. Then what's it about, Mom? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you chose pride over family. Pride. As if wanting respect in my own home was pride. As if refusing to be erased was vanity. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. And yes, it cost me. But staying would have cost more. You're taking them away. That's your choice, not mine. We can't afford to stay. You made sure of that. I charged you $2,000 a month for a house worth $500,000. I could have charged 3 times that. I gave you a gift, David, and you're angry I didn't give you more. Silence. Then quieter. I remember when Dad died, you said we'd get through it together. That family sticks together no matter what. We did get through it. We're just not together anymore. Because you pushed us away. Because you let your wife throw my life in the garbage and called it cleaning. More silence. I could hear him breathing. Could picture him rubbing his face the way Thomas used to when he was frustrated. Was he really that great? David asked suddenly. Dad? Was he really worth all this? The question stunned me. What? Everyone acts like he was perfect. You had this fairy tale marriage. But he worked long hours. He missed my games sometimes. You fought. I remember you fighting. Of course we fought. Every couple fights. But you loved him anyway. I loved him because anyway. Because he showed up when it mattered. Because he protected what was ours. Because he never made me choose between being his wife and being myself. My voice softened. Yes, David, he was worth it. Every year, every fight, every hard day, he was worth it. I'm not him. I know. I can't be him. I'm not asking you to be. Then what are you asking? I thought about that. What was I asking? For him to stand up to his wife? To choose me over her? To turn back time and prevent the hurt that had already happened? No. I'm asking you to remember me, I said finally. When you're in Phoenix, starting fresh, building your new life, remember me. Remember that I'm not just the grieving widow, not just the difficult mother-in-law. Remember that I'm a person who loved completely, lost deeply, and survived anyway, Mom. And teach my granddaughters that. Teach them that women don't have to be small, that grief doesn't make you weak, that standing up for yourself, even when it costs you everything, is sometimes the only way to survive. He was crying. I could hear it in his breathing. I'm sorry. For all of it. I'm sorry. I know. Can you forgive me? I didn't know. Forgiveness felt too big, too final, like closing a door I wasn't ready to close. Ask me again in a year, I said, after you've lived without me, after you've built your life in Phoenix. Ask me then. What if you say no? Then at least we'll both know where we stand. He laughed, broken and wet. You've changed. I had to. I miss who you were. I don't. Part 9. The Aftermath. They moved out on a Saturday. David rented a U-Haul, packed it methodically, said goodbye to neighbors who'd watched him grow up. The twins cried. Daniela looked relieved. I wasn't there. I'd said my goodbyes to Emma and Sophie on Friday, given them bracelets I'd made, promised to visit, promised to FaceTime every week. Promises I meant. Promises I'd keep. But I couldn't watch them leave. Couldn't stand in the driveway and wave and pretend this was okay. So I went to Margaret's grave instead. Her headstone was simple, just her name, her dates, and a quote she'd chosen. She did it her way. I'm doing it my way now, finally. The wind blew leaves across her grave. November transitioning to December, seasons changing without asking permission. I lost them. My son, my grandchildren. They're moving to Phoenix because I wouldn't be small anymore. Margaret didn't answer. Dead people don't. But I could imagine what she'd say. Did you lose them? Or did you find yourself? Both. The answer was both. I'd found Linda Hartwell again. Not the widow, not the mother, just Linda. A woman who loved fiercely, grieved deeply, and refused to disappear. A woman with her own apartment, her own life, her own terms. But I'd lost the daily chaos of grandchildren. Lost Sunday dinners and Wednesday calls. Lost the easy proximity that makes family feel inevitable instead of chosen. Was it worth it? I asked the headstone. The wind kept blowing. Part 10. The foundation. The house sold in spring. I hadn't planned to sell it. Had planned to keep it, rent it properly, maintain it as an investment. But standing inside the empty rooms, seeing the walls Thomas and I had painted, the floors where David had learned to walk, the kitchen where I'd cried after Margaret's funeral, I realized I didn't want it anymore. This wasn't my home. It was a museum of a life I'd already lived. I sold it to a young couple with a baby. They loved the blue exterior, the built-in bookshelves, the story of a house built on love. I didn't tell them about the battles fought in its rooms, the family fractured in its hallways. I took the money, more than I'd expected, the housing market being what it was, and I did something Margaret would have approved of. I bought a small house in Portland. Modern, clean, all mine. 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for guests. A garden where I planted morning glories. A front porch where I could sit and read. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since before David was born. Bad paintings, mostly, but mine. Evidence that I existed beyond wife, mother, grandmother. I volunteered at a grief support group, helped new widows navigate the awful paperwork, the crushing loneliness, the identity crisis of losing your person. I told them what I wished someone had told me. Grief doesn't make you weak, and survival doesn't require you to disappear. And every Sunday, I FaceTimed with Emma and Sophie. They were thriving in Phoenix. Different school, new friends, bigger backyard. Daniela seemed happier, lighter somehow, without me around to remind her of what she didn't have. David had landed a huge client, his career finally taking off. They'd built a life. Without me, but a good life nonetheless. Grandma, when are you visiting? Emma asked every week. Soon, I promised. And I would, but on my terms. As a guest, not as someone trying to reclaim territory. As Linda, not as the ghost of who I used to be. The call came on a Tuesday. Mom? David's voice, uncertain. It's been a year. It had. 1 year since they'd left. 1 year since I'd chosen myself. I remember. You said you asked me again about forgiveness. I'd forgotten I'd said that. Or blocked it out. Either way, the question hung between us, heavy with hope. Did I forgive him? I thought about the wedding album, finally restored and sitting on my coffee table. About Thomas's uniform, professionally cleaned and framed above my fireplace. About my mother's china, used every Sunday for my own dinners. Just me, remembering. I thought about the foundation. Not the house's foundation, cracked and water damaged, but the foundation Thomas and I had built. The one that had supported David through childhood, supported me through widowhood, supported all of us until we'd taken it for granted. Foundations are meant to be built on, not lived in forever. You construct them, then you move on, build something new. But you honor them. You remember what held you up when you needed it most. I forgive you, I said. David exhaled shakily.
Really? Really? You were trying to balance an impossible situation. You made mistakes. So did I. You? What mistakes did you make? I smiled. I waited too long to remember who I was. I let myself become small because it was easier than being whole. I confused accommodation with love. That's not a mistake. That's being kind. Kindness to others at the expense of yourself isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. And I taught you that being good meant being small. That's my mistake, my regret. Mom, but I'm fixing it. Every day, I'm fixing it. And someday, when Emma and Sophie are old enough, I'll teach them different. I'll teach them that being whole is better than being perfect, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, that foundations are meant to support you, not trap you. Silence. Then, Daniela wants to apologize. Really? I'm not her enemy, David. I never was. We just wanted different things from the same space. She says she understands now why you did it. She says if someone tried to erase her the way she tried to erase you, she'd burn it all down too. I laughed. I didn't burn anything. I built something new. On the ashes of what we had. On the foundation of who I am. Another pause. Can we visit? This summer, maybe? The girls miss you. I miss them too. And yes, visit. Stay in my guest room, meet my neighbors, see what I've built. It won't be the same. No, I agreed. It'll be better, because this time we all know where we stand. Epilogue. The return. They came in July. David looked good, tanned, relaxed, successful. Daniela had cut her hair short, looked younger somehow. Emma and Sophie had grown, all legs and laughter, bursting through my front door like sunlight. Grandma, you have a garden! I do. Want to help me water it? We spent the afternoon in the yard, the girls running through the sprinkler, Daniela surprisingly helpful with the weeding. David sat on the porch with me, drinking iced tea, watching his daughters play. You were right, he said quietly. About what? Everything. I let you disappear. Convinced myself you were fine because it was easier than dealing with the mess. Easier than choosing between you and Daniela. You chose your wife. That's what you're supposed to do. But I chose wrong. I should have found a way to honor both of you. To protect your things while supporting her stress, to be a better son and a better husband. I reached over, took his hand. It was bigger than Thomas's had been, rougher from yard work and responsibility. But it was warm, alive. Daniela came over, grass-stained and flushed. Your morning glories are beautiful. Thomas built you that trellis? No, I built it. She looked surprised. You? YouTube tutorial. Took me 3 tries and 2 smashed thumbs, but I figured it out. She sat down on the porch step. I'm sorry, Linda. For real this time. Not because David made me or because I want something. I'm sorry because I was cruel and you didn't deserve it. Thank you. I was jealous of your love story, your strength, your ability to keep going after losing everything. I didn't lose everything. I lost Thomas, but I still had myself. I'm trying to learn that. To be whole on my own. Not just David's wife or the girl's mom, just me. It's hard. Yeah. We sat in companionable silence, watching Emma try to teach Sophie a cartwheel. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. This is a good house, David said, looking around. Smaller than the old place, but it suits you. It does. Do you miss it? The old house. I thought about that. The blue exterior, the built-in bookshelves, 42 years of memories soaked into every wall. I miss what it represented, but I don't miss living there without him. That house was ours, mine and Thomas's. This one is just mine. And that's better? It's different. Not better or worse, just different. Emma ran over, dripping wet, grinning. Grandma, can we stay forever? You can stay all week. Then you have to go home. But I like it here.
I like having you here, but you have your own home, your own life. And that's important too. She considered this seriously. 8 years old and already learning the hard lessons. But we can visit again? Anytime you want. She hugged me, wet and grass-stained and perfect, then ran back to her sister. David stood up. I should help Daniela with dinner. You just relax. In my own house, I should help. Mom, he smiled, let us take care of you for once. So I did. I sat on my porch, in my house, watching my family move through my kitchen, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of having everything I wanted, but the peace of being entirely myself, the peace of boundaries respected, foundations honored, relationships rebuilt on truth instead of obligation. Thomas would have been proud. Hell, I was proud. The truth. You spend your whole life building foundations for other people, for your husband, your children, your family. You make yourself smaller, quieter, more convenient. You tell yourself it's love. And maybe it is. But it's also erasure. The truth is this. The foundation you build for others must first be built on solid ground. And that ground is you, your worth, your dignity, your right to exist fully in the space you occupy. When someone tries to erase you, tries to throw away your history and call it cleaning, tries to make you feel grateful for being allowed to disappear, you have two choices. You can accommodate, make yourself smaller, keep the peace. Or you can remember who you were before you learned to shrink. Remember that foundations aren't just for building on, they're for standing on. And when you built the foundation, when you own the ground beneath everyone's feet, you have power. Not the power to destroy, though you could. The power to rebuild, to establish boundaries, to say, this far, no further. I will not disappear. It will cost you. God, it will cost you. But staying would cost more. The recognition. Years from now, Emma and Sophie will remember the summer they visited Grandma's house in Portland. They'll remember the morning glories on the trellis she built herself. They'll remember watching her paint bad pictures and laugh at her own mistakes. They'll remember a woman who chose herself, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. And maybe they'll remember that when their own foundations are tested, when someone tries to make them small, they don't have to accommodate. They can build something new, on their own terms, in their own way. Because that's what Linda taught them. Foundations aren't just what you build for others. They're what you stand on when everything else falls away. And the woman who knows how to build, who remembers her worth, who refuses to disappear, she can survive anything, even the cost of choosing herself. The conclusion. The house in Portland stands blue against the sky, morning glories climbing toward the sun. Side, a woman paints, reads, lives. Sometimes her grandchildren visit. Sometimes they don't. She is okay either way, because she learned the hardest lesson. You cannot love others well until you remember how to love yourself. Cannot build a family on a foundation of your own erasure. Cannot honor your history by allowing others to throw it away. The foundation you build must be yours first. Everything else, family, love, connection, must be constructed on top of that solid ground. Never let anyone convince you that making yourself small is the same as being kind. Never let anyone throw away your history and call it cleaning. Never let anyone stand on a foundation you built and tell you there's no room for you anymore. Because the truth is simple, painful, necessary. The people who built the foundation know how to tear it down. And if tearing down is what it takes to remember who you are, if burning bridges is what it takes to stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm, then light the match. You'll survive the flames. You always do.